Welcome. No, don't do it. Did you see that? Don't do that.
You are listening to Digging In Podcast, presented by Rooted Wealth Advisors.
Welcome back to another new episode of the Digging In Podcast. We have a repeat guest now, not a new guest, Nick Barnes. Nick, how are we doing here this morning?
Doing great.
Fired up?
The vibes in the office are real good. Yeah, I'm happy to be here, man.
Yeah, they're probably good because I'm here today.
Exactly.
But, who's asking? Nick's fired up. We're actually going to be talking about operational efficiency here on this episode. So for any of, especially like our business owners, those that works with a lot of data, or even just in an operational capacity, this is definitely an episode that you're going to want to watch, because ever since Nick has started here at the firm, I've been blown away with really just the way that not the way that you just look at data specifically and processes and procedures, but I think just the way that you can extrapolate, right, from that and make it better, right? You're able to look at it in a different lens, a different perspective than I would, or I think anyone else.
I don't like tooting my own horn. I think I just have that, I kind of have that logical brain, and I think that kind of helps me. You know, I kind of view things more pragmatically.
Okay.
And so like, that's why I've really enjoyed my time as a data analyst, because, you know, like the numbers won't lie. They paint a picture, and what you want to do with that data, you can take it a multitude of different ways. So my main goal really here is to try to make the lives easier of everyone I'm kind of working around.
Okay.
So whether that's, you know, pulling something for advisors on a certain portfolio, or, you know, helping out, you know, our head trader with maybe some allocation pieces, you know, that's my main process.
Trying to become more efficient with that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if there's something we were spending, you know, let's call it 30 minutes a week on, if we can build something out for the long term that might take 10 minutes a week to update, you know, that's just over time, that's saving time. It can allow everyone to kind of, you know, go back to, you know, their normal task. And I think that's really the goal, is to be able to kind of capture the data you're looking for and present it in a, you know, in a way that's kind of palatable for the end user. My goal is to be able to take a step back and look at it from the end user side. Like, will this be comprehensible? How will they take this in? So that's a lot of what I try to do.
Do you have a process with that? And what I mean by that, I'll give you a little more context is, you know, let's say that we're doing a paperwork process, right? And, you know, there's of course data that's getting entered and filled and submitted, and it's transferring hands and it's going through different companies. And I guess my question is like, do you have a process kind of step by step of, hey, I'm observing this, I'm looking at this, and then I'm doing this?
I do. And I think a big piece of that is honestly communication from like other team members, like trying to pick up on what their pain points might be, like something that it may not be the most difficult task in the world for them, but it tends to like eat up a lot of their time.
Okay.
So I try to like garner some insight on like, you know, what's kind of causing you problems, or, you know, what's something that's become a pain for you really. And like, if I can find a way to make that more efficient, you know, more economical, or whatever the case may be, that's really what I'm looking to do.
Okay. So you're taking a pain point and ultimately trying to alleviate that pain point with the data that you already have access to.
Right.
You have access to.
Yeah. If there's a smoother way to do something, if we can pull this in differently, you know, that's really what I'm looking for. And that's kind of how I'm wired. Like if we're in meetings, I'll think about that, like, you know, on the fly, just like, what can we do about, you know, in this situation, how can we maybe better improve a process over here? So that's really like, I think how I am wired and how I think.
Dude, that's cool. I think that's cool. I like that. You use Excel a lot?
I'm in Excel every day for multiple hours a day. So yeah, I'm a big Excel guy.
I think my first question when it comes to Excel Do you have any favorite formulas?
I don't know about favorite, probably the most used would be an X lookup. So I've been big into
Ooh,
the X lookups recently.
okay. I know what that is, by the
Yeah.
way.
So the X lookup's huge for, matching account numbers, pulling common data because we have a lot of that between different carriers or platforms to be able to pull that kind of common thread. That's a huge time save as
Okay.
opposed to having to go by name, middle initial, and matching up the data that way.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of mine.
Whoa.
And I'm big on, the dashboards, the kind of trying to make things look, nice and organized. So I really like that creative side, which I don't use that often. I'm more on the back end, but when I do get to kind of make some presentation stuff, I enjoy that piece of it too.
So did you, whether it was in school or just on your own, like how did you kind of gather your Excel skills?
It does take time because, all these shortcuts and formulas, it takes time to really get in the rhythm of being able to knock them out quickly without having to what am I entering here? Is this the lookup number? Whatever the case may be. It takes a lot of time and also just the interest. I think I have a general interest in the capabilities of Excel because I want to learn more. Excel is a great tool to be able to kind of shorten your long-term work. So you put in a lot of upfront work to make this as efficient as possible. And the goal, in a certain report you're building should be, I want to make this as quick as possible down the road. So upfront, it might take you hours to build it.
Yeah.
But then how much time is that going to save over time? That's really what I like about it. It's the ability to kind of cut down on some of your time in the future.
Yeah.
You're sacrificing a lot in the upfront, but then what you're getting out of it is hopefully a good tool.
So the short term, return is in essence probably a loss, but the long term return quickly eats that up and makes it profitable.
I'd say, especially if it's like a task you're finding yourself doing every single day, if there are ways to better automate that,
Yeah.
I definitely think it's way worthwhile. For one-offs, maybe you have to just a report here, a report there. I still think it's a net positive, even with the time constraint, if there is any.
How do you think AI is going to impact whether it's what you do or just data as a whole?
Oh, I really think it'll be a kind of drastic shift, especially when you look at coding, data integration pieces. I think AI, I don't know if it'll necessarily take away data analysts. Maybe I'm saying that, more so.
A little biased.
Yeah, a little biased there, but I think it'll just kind of rework how the data analyst actually does their job.
Yeah.
They'll be using a lot more AI funnels to kind of, again, improve efficiency, make their job even easier.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we'll ever completely go away from having a traditional analyst as opposed to just using AI, just because of the nuances, the different challenges that different situations present. I think you might still probably need a human touch, to be able to kind of differentiate certain situations.
If you let's imagine that, there's a business owner that's watching or an operations director or self-employed individual who hasn't really looked at data in a way that you've discussed. What would be what would you recommend would be the first step to those people to try and become more efficient?
You can't measure what you can't track. So you might have all this information floating around out there, but if you're not picking it up, I don't see how you can successfully, measure, any KPIs you're looking into.
What are KPIs?
Key performance indicators. I think that would be the first piece. If you're not tracking this, how can you tell what you need to improve upon, what you're actually doing really well in? I think it can lead to sound decision making and kind of taking the emotion out of it and just really what's been working for us, what hasn't, and you have the data to back that up. You have the proof. I think that's a huge thing to have that kind of history there is, massive for future decision making, to be able to look back on previous years, what worked for us, what didn't. I think that's massive for any leader, CEO, owner.
So ultimately you need to track it first. And then I think the way that I've heard you kind of say it is then identify what your pain points are in terms of what takes the most time.
Yeah. And what are you looking to pick up insight on?
I like that. I think that's a valuable resource that I think is often overlooked in a lot of different businesses and companies, especially that are growing, right? And they're so focused on the growth that it can start to kind of catch up to them. the longer you wait, in my opinion, to start to track those things, the more time it's going to take up front to build that out,
Oh
right?
yeah, 100%, 100%. I think we've gone through a little bit of that as, going back and making changes. And then, but yeah, once you pick it up or once you start tracking efficiently, it's not really that big of a lift,
Yeah.
to be able to kind of monitor that and kind of keep all your data clean. A data analyst isn't necessarily like a sexy type of position, but it pays off in the long run, like, because it, again, it could lead to better decision making.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think couldn't have said it any better. Nick, man, I appreciate we had a genuine curiosity in terms of some of those layers, and I'm willing to bet that the more people listened along, like I think the more that they can see the value, right, in what you're explaining there. So if you have questions about your situation, you got questions to Nick about his data analyst position and operational efficiencies, give our office a call, 866-766-8332. And as always, we'll dig in soon.
This was Digging In Podcast, presented by Rooted Wealth Advisors.
All right, man.
Good job. Thanks, brother.